Planeload of bombs falls on America's deep south. The ultimate goal? To fight global warming by bombing the world's forests back to life. It's called geoengineering, using radical new technologies and techniques to modify the natural systems of the Earth and combat the biggest problem facing humanity. But can it work? A special team is willing to do what it takes to find out. The forests of the Earth are the lungs of the planet. Today we need them more than ever to breathe in and absorb the excess emissions of carbon dioxide that are causing global warming. But even as CO2 levels in the atmosphere are rising, the forests of the world are disappearing. 52,000 square kilometers, an area larger than Switzerland, are lost each year. Deforestation now accounts for 1/4 of all excess greenhouse gas emissions, and global warming is gaining ground.
We need to reverse the cycle now, because once it's gone past the tipping point, there may be no turning back.
To replace the world's disappearing forests, we'd need to replant an area the size of Monaco about every 20 minutes. Environmental engineer Mark Hodges believes conventional reforestation methods are too slow and labor-intensive. At best, an experienced forester can plant a few hundred saplings a day. But Mark has an idea. If it works, it could boost that planting rate 1,000-fold.
What I propose to do is to produce millions of canisters, little aerodynamic bombs that have a seedling in them, and then they are delivered in large numbers by aircraft to very cost-effectively reforest large areas of land in a short period of time.
The mass planting of trees from the air just may regrow our forests quickly enough to gain ground on global warming. But Mark needs help to turn his idea into reality. And it's on the way. A team from Discovery will conduct experiments to see if global reforestation from the air could really work. Physicist Basil Singer will test the science.
Drop anything from a plane and you're looking at some really tricky physics.
Eco-engineer Jennifer Languel will examine the technology.
What's it going to be made out of? How much is it going to weigh? How is it going to be delivered out of an aircraft?
And business executive Kevin O'Leary will look at costs and logistics.
This is a fantastic opportunity. Think of the challenges we have with carbon and how forests solve that.
They meet with Mark for a flight they'll never forget. After weeks of surveys around the world, Mark has chosen a compelling location for his aerial reforestation experiment. The Mississippi Delta, offshore from New Orleans, a land where climate has a history of violence. In the autumn of 2005, two big hurricanes, Katrina and Rita, slammed into the Gulf Coast. The levees protecting New Orleans failed, and the city flooded. New Orleans still hasn't fully recovered.
This is a disaster down here. You can still see the effects of the hurricane. All these empty slabs have houses on them once.
The whole world knows the tragedy of New Orleans. But there's another story here. A tale of destruction and death that has received almost no attention. Katrina and Rita caused the greatest forestry disaster in American history. More than 320 million trees were either blown down or killed by salt water.
Every tree out there seems to be gone.
They look like toothpicks. There's millions and millions of trees that are down.
As it decomposes, this dead forest will release 105 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, as much as all the forests in the US will absorb in a year. A sight of devastation like this adds urgency to the task ahead. The team faces 3 challenges. Engineer a prototype canister that can hold and protect a mangrove seedling, so it lands in good shape, ready to grow. Next, figure out how to drop thousands of canisters at a time in just the right pattern to build a forest. And finally, find the right kind of aircraft for the job. When forests are burned or die, much of the carbon they store escapes into the air, raising CO2 levels. And when forests disappear, they no longer function as our planet's CO2 sponges. This double blow allows global warming to gain ground. The team is helping environmental engineer Mark Hodges develop a way to replant the world's forests from the air. Their first task is to find the right aircraft for the job. Mark has chosen this twin-engine airplane. It's called a Skyvan. It's a short-haul freighter with a rear door that can open in flight. It seems the perfect platform to drop the canisters. That's one task down. The next challenge is the drop pattern. Mark knows that forests thrive when trees grow about 120 centimeters apart, a spread that gives them just the right amount of air and sunlight. For the experiment to work, the canisters must fall in a consistent 120 centimeter pattern. The team decides to conduct a series of drop tests. The target zone is a clearing deep in the forest. They've marked grid lines to help measure the spread of the canisters on impact. Basil Singer, the team's science advisor, has devised a test using half-kilo flour sacks as stand-ins for real canisters.
The aim is to drop our canisters out of a plane and get exactly the forest we want. I'd like to do 4 tests. A low test and a high test, both a low velocity and a high velocity. Then we can really get a handle on how speed and altitude affect the distribution of these trees.
At ground zero, Mark will direct the bombing runs.
Basil, what's your location right now?
Coming round low and fast. We're going at 100-foot altitude. We're going to be doing 120 knots.
The team must find the right combination of altitude and speed to achieve the 120 centimeter spread pattern needed for a healthy forest. First up, low and fast.
The density is really compact. It's not much of a forest, it's more like a hedgerow.
It doesn't work. On to the next combination.
We're coming in low and slow.
Low and slow is also too compact.
We're going high and fast.
And high and fast nearly misses the target zone. There's just one combination left, flying at high altitude at very low speed.
Careful. But we're thinking that's going to give us the best spread of any of the drops.
Mark wants the plane to approach at 150 meters at 70 knots, but the pilot's against it.
Negative. I can't take this airplane slower. If we go below 70, we could stall.
If the airspeed is too low, the air pressure under the wings will no longer support the airplane's weight. The Skyvan would fall out of the sky. The pilot finally agrees to fly near stall speed, but he'll scrub the run if he senses danger.
High and slow, that is 70 knots and 500 feet, correct?